Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and to do a little bit of a camera comparison between my iPhone 16 and my iPhone 14. Now, there's a lot of things to keep in mind here. Number one, if you're trying to go through and get the better phone here, it's definitely going to be the iPhone 16. This phone is going to be giving you just better capability and better quality. I've done a few photo comparison tests, video comparison tests between the 16 and 14 already, and there's some little bit of differences that you'll notice. But what's very, very fascinating to me is that for the most part, I think the iPhone 14 camera still holds up very well against the iPhone 16 camera. I think a big thing to keep in mind here before I show you the photos and everything is that there's a couple of differences, but the quality could still be better in some ways on the iPhone 14. I really don't think going from a 14 to a 16 is like the biggest upgrade of all time. Where you're going to start noticing big upgrades is when you go from like an iPhone 14 to an iPhone 16 Pro or an iPhone 14 to an iPhone like 15 Pro. I think jumping up to those Pro models is where you're probably going to start noticing those bigger differences. But beyond that, I think there's still a lot of overlap here. So to give you a little bit of perspective, the iPhone 16 and the 14 both are giving you wide and ultra wide cameras, and they're both giving you wide angle cameras on the front side on the front camera as well. Now, they're both able to film in 4K at 60 resolution. So you can film in both 4K at 60 on the front and the back. So that's very nice. Most people probably film in 1080p, but that still is a very nice thing to basically have that type of capability of choosing 4K at 60 if you really want to go there. And both these phones are giving you that type of capability. Now, the iPhone 16 is giving you that camera button. I'm going to be honest, right? I think it's a cool feature. I think it's awesome. I pretty much haven't really used the camera button all that much. It's really not that big of a difference. I think it's cool to have it, but it really isn't this big of a deal. And I generally do think if you're somebody who just wants to go ahead and like I have an iPhone that has an action that has the camera button. I really don't ever use it. I have iPhones that have the action button too. I barely even use those things. So I think it's a novelty. I think it's cool, but it's way more quicker and way less glitchy to just use your fingers to zoom in and out and take a photo rather than relying on that camera button. But that is a really nice feature the 16 has. From a zooming in, zooming out capability, both of these phones support 0.5x zoom, but the iPhone 14 only gives you 1x zoom, which zooms in like the 5 times, whereas on the iPhone 16, it is giving you 2x zoom, which is like 10 times. So the iPhone 16 does allow you to have twice the amount of zooming in as the iPhone 14. So that is another really cool thing that the iPhone 16 has going for it. Both of these iPhones do give you things like cinematic mode, but the iPhone 16 does give you super high resolution photos with 24 megapixel and 48 megapixel lenses because the iPhone 14 has only 12 megapixels. You're getting the next generation portraits, which is just like a fancy way of saying that you're getting more portrait mode options. You're getting macro photography option inside of the iPhone 16, which again is really cool. You are getting, Dolby Vision on both, but you are getting spatial photos and videos on the iPhone 16 as well, which is another really cool asset for that type of device. So when it comes down to those things from the raw like outside features, I think the iPhone 16 does hold up, better in some ways, but the 14 in a lot of ways, besides the camera button and the zooming in, zooming out with the 10x versus the 5x, I think the 14 still does a pretty good job there. Now, if I go ahead and switch over to my screen so you can see the photos here, the iPhone 14 photos are going to be on the left. The iPhone 16 photos will be on the right. These are straight from the cameras. I did not edit any of these photos. I didn't do anything like that. All I did was just take the photos basically almost at the exact same time in the same location. So let's get into it. Now, number one, I can already tell from looking at both these photos, it looks to me that the 16 photos look a little bit more, I don't know the best way to describe it, like warmer and a little bit more in tone. The 14 photos already look a little bit more, I don't know how to describe it. They look a little bit more, I guess, like brighter. And I noticed this with the iPhone 15 as well. Now, if we go and start zooming into, like, let's just say this leaf, right? And like a part of me wants to say that the iPhone 14 photo that's on the left kind of looks a little bit better in some ways. But then I start looking at like this particular area right here, and I look at this area, same exact area on the iPhone 16, and it seems to me that it seems a little bit more like evened out on the iPhone 16. The 14 photo looks a little bit more like uneven in a way. It looks like this part is like super blown out, where this part's a little bit darker. It seems like with the 16, I think it did a better job at keeping a lot of things in tone, and I do think that's a very nice thing going on for something like the iPhone, 16. Otherwise, though, I know a lot of people end up liking brighter photos, and I would probably say that the brighter photos sometimes could lead you into thinking it's the better one. Even when I look at some of these other photos here, like, I don't know, like, I think the 16 did do an overall better job, but I still think the 14 did a pretty decent job too. So this is just the first photo. This next photo I love doing, it's basically just of the sky. And from first glance, I could probably tell you, and I saw this yesterday too with the 15, I like how the iPhone 14 brightened it up. In real life, it probably looked more like the 16 is a little more gloomy outside, but I do like on the iPhone 14, it made things look a little bit more brighter, which I kind of prefer, but the warmness and the evenness of the iPhone 16 might be another advantage. Now, if we go and take a look at this particular leaf, like right over here, right, let's just kind of zoom into this particular portion, and I want to zoom into the same exact spot on the iPhone 14. One thing you'll notice is the graininess sometimes on the iPhone 14 photos when zooming in. Because you're getting a lower megapixel count on the iPhone, 14, you're not going to be able to see all of these, things in focus. So if you're looking at the iPhone 14, look at all these things that aren't really in focus here. Whereas on the iPhone 16, not only, once again, they're more evened out, but they're also just a little bit better. Like they're not as pixelated because there's just way more, pixels there. So that is kind of a nice thing going on for the iPhone 16. You can also kind of see that the leaves are way more in focus, and you can see the leaves on the iPhone 16, even though the photo was more bright, at least the sky was more bright on the iPhone 14, the leaves are more bright on the iPhone 16. So it does a good job at kind of, once again, evening out the tones, whereas sometimes on the iPhone 14, it kind of does the opposite. Now this next photo was of this cat, right? Now, nothing super crazy. I tried to get a portrait mode photo of it. It wasn't, staying still. But if we go and take a look at its head, right, if we go and zoom in, one thing that I did notice is that if we take a look at the ears, it's very fascinating to me. It looks like the ears are a little bit more in focus on something like the iPhone 14 than the iPhone 16. This is something I've seen over and over and over again on the iPhone 16s, is that it clips out some things, and I think it'll get better over time, but it clips out some things and it doesn't keep the object in the foreground. It makes it like kind of blurred out. So you can see right here, there's like a little bit of like blurriness that kind of chips into the ear itself. Whereas on the iPhone 14, it doesn't do that. I've noticed this with the 14 and 15. The 16, I think it does actually have an issue where it kind of clips out, the subject sometimes. You can see even here, look at like even the hair on the cat kind of looks better here and there on the iPhone 14. But you can see on the iPhone 16, it glitches out, it kind of clips the hair, it kind of clips all this other stuff. So there's kind of an advantage on the iPhone 14 right there. I would say the rest of the photo probably looks better on the 16, maybe. But like even then, like when you even look at this area, like why is it so much like blurred out here? These are just standard photos. This isn't even anything crazy. So I think that in of itself is another interesting thing going on for these phones as well. Now this one was just an indoor photo. Once again, from the jump, brighter photo on the iPhone 16 without a doubt. Zooming in, one thing I always do is like check out like these random areas on the side. And it looks to me that both of them did a pretty good job at kind of, showcasing the colors. You can see for yourself right here, if I go and like zoom in right here, let's kind of see how both these phones kind of look. And I don't know if there's one, like you're never going to be zooming in this much, but I don't think there's one that like is looking like exponentially better here and there. I think they both look pretty good. So there doesn't really seem to, seem to be anything super insane going on here. They both look pretty good for the most part. So that photo is pretty much like a wash. I would say these are pretty similar when it comes down to it. And finally, I had this basic portrait mode photo, indoor, not the best lighting condition. So this is not an outdoor photo. This is an indoor, like basic type of lighting. And one thing that I will notice is on something like the iPhone 16, if you just take a look at it like right here, right? There doesn't really seem to be anything super insane, like any big differences as far as I can tell, right? They both look pretty similar. It's when you start zooming in, that's kind of where things start looking a little bit more interesting. So if we take a look at the top of the head right here, right? So let's just go and zoom in right here. No, my keyboard's not working. So once again, right, to me personally, the iPhone 16 has this problem where it clips out some of the things in the background, right? Like it clips this as if it is part of the background right here, where it isn't. Where the iPhone 15 or the 14 here did a better job at keeping this in the foreground. I've noticed this so many times where the iPhone 16's camera will just randomly clip out things in portrait mode or even regular mode that thinks it's the background, but it's not the background. So even in a case like this, well, actually this is like a little bit better. But even here, you can get like, look at the 2012, right? Why is the 2012 here so blurry, right? It doesn't make any sense why this is blurred out here. The 14, look at this. This is clearly in focus as it should be because it's part of the hat. And this is portrait mode, regular portrait mode, nothing crazy. It seems to me, right, The 16 tries to focus in on the face a little bit, right? Maybe it tries to focus in on the face, but then it glitches out on everything else. So I don't really know what's going on here. I think it's an issue with the iPhone 16, and I hope Apple ends up addressing it. So from the bird's eye view, from what I can tell you, when I look at these two cameras, they're very good sensors. It looks like the 16 has a little bit of a glitch where it kind of tries to blur out some things that it shouldn't be. I will tell you in almost every single other way, the iPhone 16 is a way better camera. The colors are way more evened out. Having that camera button is nice. Having the additional zooming in capability is a very nice thing to have. And I do think this is a very cool thing, and it's a very nice camera. I think the 14 does a really good job at handling the evenness of basically blurring out things and things like that. But I'm going to be honest, if I had an iPhone 14, I wouldn't upgrade to the 16 just because of the camera. I feel like that's kind of a small upgrade, but I would go to the 16 Pro or 15 Pro. I think that might be the bigger upgrade overall. So in terms of that, that kind of covers it up there for the most part. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.